and a super good Sunday morning to each and every single one of you. Here I am out along the other river trail. Let me switch my cap around. The sun's from behind me anyway, and that will protect my neck. Last weekend, storming, raining, icy cold temperatures. Not really ideal training weather. Today we're back up to over 30 degrees Celsius, and what's more, bright sunshine. And as you can see, the sunshine's coming from behind me, so which means that the only way I can get decent lighting in this video is if I turn around and start walking backwards, but that's not the safest thing to do, so I'm afraid we'll have to work with side view video. Anyway, today is effectively the end of week 12 of the 13-week training program for the Granada Half Marathon. Today is Sunday. Next week Saturday is race day, Granada Half Marathon race day. The race that I was hoping to run, that I'm not allowed to run, and it's a local regional race here in the city of Granada in the south of Spain. And the reason why I'm not allowed to run can be summed up by the wristband that I'm wearing and the International Olympic Committee. You see, other countries have adapted entry forms for races to make putting a gender marker on the entry form non-compulsory, or making it optional to select a non-gender category for competing. Locally, that hasn't happened, and it's a complicated political story because here in Spain, transgender rights are constitutionally protected. However, because they're constitutionally protected, there's no separate non-binary category when competing in distance running events like marathons and half marathons and such like. And because I have a Y chromosome, that excludes me from the women's division in terms of the IOC ruling. However, because within my body I have a hormonal profile that does not fit into the men's category, I am excluded from the men's category as well. So I'm excluded from the women's category, I'm excluded from the men's category thanks to and both of these thanks to the IOC ruling. So as a result, because there's not a non-binary category being affirmed here in Spain, as it has in several other countries already, it simply means that the Granada Half Marathon effectively disqualifies me from both gender categories, and as a result of that, my race entry is rejected. So next week Saturday is Granada Half Marathon Day. I do have it in mind to run my own self-supported half marathon early in the morning on Sunday the 26th, which is still a possibility depending on how this week's energy levels and taper and emotional state goes. Because this past Monday I was hit by probably the most severe bout of gender dysphoria that I've had in ages, at least in the year since I've been on HRT. When I started HRT, the dysphoria noise, the constant buzz of dysphoria noise dropped all the way down, which is wonderful. So I suppose this episode of dysphoria that I'm experiencing at the moment is not exactly, let me just check the time, it's not exactly much worse than I've probably been experiencing for my entire life before starting HRT. But because my dysphoria baseline used to be so high, these bouts of extreme dysphoria maybe didn't feel as bad, simply because it was bouncing up and peaking from a, how can you call it, a much higher baseline. But now because I'm on HRT, and it's brought my baseline dysphoria so much lower, the complete swing across of having a bout of extreme dysphoria is so much higher than what my baseline has been, is probably why it's feeling so much worse. And because of these dysphoria feelings, and I've analyzed where they're coming from, and it's no single incident, it's about 4 or 5 incidents stacked up all together, including the fast approaching Granada Half Marathon in 1 week's time that I've been effectively disqualified from. It's meant that I've been physically not able to train at all this last week. So 2 weeks out from the half marathon, and I stopped training altogether. And the reason for stopping training altogether, many of you will say, well, that's just stupid. Well, where I do all my training at the moment is in the gymnasium where I work, jump on the treadmill and knock out the kilometers that I need to knock out for my for whatever my training is for that day. So I'm doing all of my training, Granada Half Marathon training, on the treadmill at the moment. And in the gym, immediately in front of the treadmill, right there in your face, is a floor to ceiling mirror. And when you have severe dysphoria, the absolute worst feeling, or my absolute worst feeling, is seeing myself in a mirror. And to be running on the treadmill for over an hour, staring at my reflection, full body reflection in a floor-to-ceiling mirror is just too much to be able to handle. So as a result, I have not been able to get onto the treadmill. Or actually, three times I tried getting onto the treadmill this week and had to get off. The best I managed on the treadmill this week was a whole 3 minutes, and after 3 minutes I just had to get off because I couldn't cope. Hopefully this coming week goes somewhat better, but there's potential half marathon redemption. Is our local village has got an 18-kilometer race coming up on the 16th of May. It's not a half marathon. I've put in my entry, deselecting gender categories, and so far my entry has been accepted. However, I'm not holding my breath, and half and half expecting a follow-up message. Even though my entry currently has been accepted, I'm expecting a follow-up message to say that my entry has been disqualified, and that can probably happen anytime within the next 3 weeks, but there is a possibility of pinning a non-gendered number onto my chest in a further 3 weeks, or basically 4 weeks from today. So I should actually get back into doing some degree of training, because that might very well be happening. This is ended in being a really long video, really ranting for nearly 12 minutes. But that's the update on where I am at the end of week 12 of 13 of the half marathon training plan. Possibly the half marathon will be happening next week. I'll see how the week goes, and if I do that half marathon, it'll probably be slow and easy as a long training day build for the 18-kilometer race, which has got massive amounts of elevation gain. So with that, time to sign up for this week's Sunday, and hopefully next week Sunday I'll have more cheerful news for you to be able to let you know what all is happening, and hopefully training is back on track. Also, speaking of which, no training this week. My weight has ballooned. Did a weigh-in today, and I'm up to nearly 92.5 kilos. At the end of February, I was 90.5 kilos. So I'm 2 kilograms up since February, and that's probably all likely been just this past week when I haven't done any training. That would be my guess. But anyway, with that, time to sign off. Stay well, stay hydrated. Speak to you next week. Take care. Bye.